So I'm just going to start out with my clay. It's kind of uneven a little bit, so you can kind of pat it in, you know, as it goes around. You can kind of pat it into a more centered shape, but generally I just center it, you know, I just start coning it up. So it's a little bit off center just from the way you throw it down there. You just take your fingers and you just center it. As you're coning up, you're just squeezing it into a cone. Now, I almost always cone all of my clay. I find not for some particle alignment or anything like that. I just find that it's easier to center the clay once you've coned it up. It's kind of waking up your clay a little bit. The other thing that's happening is you're compressing all of your clay together, so if there's any air bubbles in it, and this is basically, I'll cone it up again so you can see. Basically what is happening, so you've made a cone, and then when you are coming back down, you are literally bending it to the side, and with your top hand, you're pressing down. Now that was a little extreme, but that's basically what I'm doing is with my right hand, I am pressing it in and pressing it down at the same time. Now, one of the things that happens sometimes is you'll get this little pad of clay right here. Womp, womp. That's why I like this tool, is because I can trim that off of there. And it's generally not very much clay. Just a little bit usually. And you can just peel that off. And then that makes it a lot easier to center. And you just put that in your scrap. And so now you don't have that big lump of clay right there worrying about it. So now you can go ahead and center. Now, one of the things that for when I learned how to throw, I learned how to center backwards. So basically what that means is that a lot of people center with their right hand with the wheel spinning counterclockwise. And that just makes it easier because the wheel is spinning in the directions of your finger, so you're not going to catch your fingers. Well, for whatever reason, I learned how to throw with my left hand as my stabilizing hand on the side. I've tried to retrain myself to throw like this, and I can, but it's not that comfortable for me. So I throw with my left side down, and if you haven't learned how to throw yet, try to learn to throw with your right hand like this, because it just makes it a little bit easier. You don't get your fingers caught in their clay. So now I'm going to go ahead and center my clay. And one of the rules that I like to follow when I'm centering clay is that I want the base of my circle the same as the diameter of my finished piece. So if I want something wider, say a bowl, I'm going to throw this wider. If I want it to be a mug, I'm going to center it to the shape that I want the base. Now, I'm a wet thrower. Most people don't throw with this much water, but I'll try and keep my hands wiped off so you guys can see what I'm doing. Porcelain makes a lot of slip. So now I have this centered. I'm going to get rid of some of that slip there, and you can use your sponge to do that too. And I like to throw with the mud tool sponges, but sometimes just a regular old half yellow sponge works if you don't have a mud tool sponge. And this is my brand new wheel from Brent. which is really nice. So now that I have this pat of clay centered, I'm going to go ahead and just cut off any little excess that might be right here. And that just makes it a little bit easier to keep it centered, keep it cleaned up. So now I'm going to go ahead and open. And there are all different ways that you can open. You can open with your thumbs. You can open with your finger like this. You can open like this with your hand upside down. There are many, many different ways to open. I usually open with these two fingers. Now, I know how deep to go because I've made a billion of these little cups. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna, why is it wobbly? It's so loud. So now what I like to do is take my throwing stick. And what my throwing stick is going to do, basically, is I'm going to create a flat bottom in my piece. So there's a smooth side to the throwing stick that's rounded and a flat side. The rounded side is going to go towards me. I mean, away from me. The flat side is going to go away from me. And the rounded side is going to go towards me. And I'm just going to stick the stick down there. And I'm holding on to it with two hands. So I'm going to put the stick inside. And basically it's just going to flatten that out right there. And I'm going to push it down and go out from the middle of the vessel. So I'm going to So that's just going to flatten the bottom and smooth it so I get a nice even bottom. That's just enabling me to get a nice even bottom. And just bring it up a little bit. I don't want to open this too much because I am going to put the netting texture on it. So I'm going to take my metal rib and I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. And because I want it more of a cylinder, I just kind of pushed it back into a cylinder shape so it wasn't so round on the inside. And when I'm getting the clay off, remember, you don't want to slide your finger up. You want to slide your finger across there. So you're not going to slice your finger on the metal rib. Because remember, it is called the metal rib of death for a reason. Because it can cut you to death. So we're just going to smooth out our piece. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit wobbly, but we can fix that. Wobbly is no problemo. So basically, to fix a wobbly piece, you want to make sure your hand is wet and you want to make sure your piece is wet. And you're just going to get it wet. Start at the bottom in the middle. Okay, so now we're just going to take our piece and we're just going to basically hold your fingers at a pinch. That's what we're going to do. There we go. We have a much more even. So basically what I did was all the way up. I just pinched it and pulled it up. So now I'm going to, oops, Don't hit it with your finger on the way back up. And how I'm fixing that is I'm just pinching it together and down at the same time. So I'm pushing down and pinching it at the same time. Voila. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the metal rib again, and we're just going to clean it up because we want it as smooth as possible. We don't want those throwing marks in there because it might interfere with our net texture. So I just put my finger on the inside and again wiping away from the blade, not up the blade. So now I'm just smoothing out the bottom again. And now I'm going to cut off the skirt, which is at the very base of the piece. This makes the foot pretty much because I'm not going to trim a foot onto it. So I'm going to take my cutter, and you can use any wooden stick that has a point. And we're just going to cut it like that. And now I'm going to get it wet. You want to make sure there's water in the well right here, because when you undercut it, that water enables you to cut it away without it sticking to your piece. That just makes for a cleaner, much nicer pot. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the net on. So now I have my netting. That's not it. We'll use the blue one since this is the one we just got and we just cut it. So we're going to start like this. And you want to make sure that it's parallel to your bat, because if it's not parallel to your bat, then you might have a little trouble with it not matching up on the other side. So we're just going to smush it down. Smush is the technical term, until it sticks to the piece. Now it's not going to be perfect, perfectly round when we're done with this, but that's okay. We don't need it perfectly round. Life is not perfectly round, so we don't need it to be. So we just go ahead and push that in at the bottom. Now if you're really concerned about all this extra, you can take a pair of scissors and cut it off. I'm not going to, because I'm not that concerned with it. So I'm just smushing. Smushing is the technical term. Smushing this netting down. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to take our metal rib, and I like to kind of put my fingers inside to give a support. So if you really wanted to, you could cut this off and you could fit it exactly to your mug, but I'm not going to. So I'm just gonna press this down, and I'm not pressing really hard. I'm just pressing it in there. And I'm just holding my other hand. Now the other thing you can do is like this. This also works. I find this distorts the piece a little bit when you do it this way, but we can straighten the distortion out when we are done. so you can just take your metal rib and pull it up like this. And I'm just keeping my hand in there for the stability of it. And before you start this part, you can always just make sure that you have enough slip on the inside that it stays nice and lubricated. Okay, so now I'm just going to down here, making sure that this is all pushed in at the bottom. Now the seam is where I'll put my handle. So the seam is, it's okay that it's like that. Okay, so this looks really good. But remember, it's going to be really uneven, but we're going to fix it. So now we're going to take the netting off, and you have a really nice net texture right there. But it's really wobbly. Look, it's like wonky and wobbly. Well, this is where the throwing stick really comes in handy. But before we do the throwing stick, let's do the handle. I mean the rim. So there's a little bit of water inside of it, so I'm just going to get that out. First, I'm just going to pinch. I'm not going to pinch a lot. Make sure your rim is wet. And I'm just going to pinch just a little bit. I'm not pinching a lot. And just hold your hands in place. I just have my hands on my thighs. And see, already it's a lot more round. It's still a little off round, but that's just to get it started. So now we're going to take our throwing stick. Make sure you dip it in the water first. And what we're going to do is we're just going to gently, and I have my hands. So basically I'm holding my hand. One hand on top is one way and the other hand is the other way. And that gives me stability so I'm not pushing it too far. And I'm just going to push it out like that and bring it up. So I'm going to push it out. And I'm not going fast. Like, you don't have to go fast. And I'm just pulling it out gently. I'm not doing it fast and I'm not doing it hard. So you can see that it's a little bit more cylindrical. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect because you put the texture on there. But it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just taking my sponge and I'm just pushing it out some more. Just like that. Now I think this looks really good. I'm just going to clean up the rim a little bit, and I'm going to do that with my leather chamois. I'll get it wet. So I have my chamois wet, and then we can just smooth out the rim. And this has gotten a little bit soft on me, but that's okay. And there you go. There you have it. And I'm just cleaning it up and getting it to where I want it on the rim. And you can go back in and clean up your inside. If you don't like your shape, you can always push it out some more. Just like that. And so now what I'm going to do is, I'm still not really loving this shape, so I'm going to go ahead and push it out just a little bit more with my throwing stick. There we go. That's the shape more that I wanted. So now I'll just take my sponge and clean up. I really like it with the belly out more. So I'll just take my throwing sponge, just cleaning it up a little bit. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to use my wiggle wire. And here's my wiggle wire, and I'm just going to hold it. I put the loops on my little fingers and hold it with my big fingers, my first fingers, and I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth. Just a little bit. Wiggle it just a little bit. So now this is going to be able to sit up for a little bit, and after we sit it up and let it get firm, then we will be able to put the handle on it. All right, there you go. And that's how you do it.